Well, would you look at what we got here? A 2026 Chevrolet Nova Supersport 4.5 Dior. Yep, they actually went and did it. Chevy finally decided to dust off one of the baddest street machines ever made. Slap a big old motor in it and let it eat. And wouldn't you know it, I got my mitts on one. Ain't brand new though. Nope. This one's got some lightly used miles on it, which means she's got a few stories to tell. Now, right off the bat, I gotta say, I like what I see. They didn't try to get all modern and weird with the styling. No swoopy nonsense, no electric doodads where they don't belong. Just good, old-fashioned muscle. It's got the long, lean stance of a proper Nova, with a little extra attitude thrown in. You get the mean front grille, big round headlights, and just enough chrome to make your grandpappy nod in approval. And out back? Well, let's just say, if you're sitting behind this thing at a red light, you best hope you ain't trying to race, 'cause you're about to get a face full of taillights. Now, let's pop the hood and see what kind of bad decision Chevrolet encouraged with this. Hood latch clunks open. Oh yeah, there she is. A big, honkin' 454 cubic inch V8. That's 7.4 liters of hold onto your britches. Naturally aspirated, none of that turbo or hybrid malarkey. Just a massive lump of iron making somewhere, north of 650 horsepower and enough torque to rotate the earth a couple degrees. You mash the loud pedal, and I promise you, you'll find out real quick whether your back tires are any good. And here's the best part. They actually gave you a proper transmission. A 6-speed manual, just the way the car gods intended. Sure, you can get it with one of those fancy 10-speed automatics if you don't mind being shunned by your peers. But let's be honest, this kind of car deserves a clutch pedal. It's got a short throw, nice and crisp, and every shift feels like you're slapping fate right in the face. Now step inside and you'll notice something. They kept it simple. No giant tablet screens, no spaceship controls, just good, honest gauges, a proper shifter, and a set of seats that look like they actually belong in a car, not some fancy European lounge. The dash is a nice mix of old school and new, analog talk and speedo, with a little digital readout in the middle that tells you what gear you're in, oil pressure, and whether or not you're currently melting the rear tires. Speaking of tires, they actually gave this thing some decent meat. None of that skinny nonsense from the factory. We got a nice set of staggered 305s in the back, 275s up front, wrapped around some proper 5-spoke wheels that look like they belong on a Nova, not a Hot Wheels car. And underneath, they didn't cheap out either. Independent rear suspension, modern coilovers, big old Brembo brakes. Yeah, it ain't exactly your uncle's Nova, but that's probably for the best. 'Cause this one won't send you straight into a telephone pole the first time you try to take a corner. Now, what good's all this power if it don't sound right? Well, lucky for us, this thing's got one of the best exhaust notes I've heard in years. Fire it up and it don't just purr, it barks. Engine roars to life. Oh yeah, that's the sound of bad decisions and good times. Deep, throaty, with just enough lope in the idle to let everyone know you mean business. Give it a few revs, and it cracks like a thunderstorm rolling in. If this don't get your heart pumping, you might need to check your pulse. Now let's take her for a spin. Sound of tires chirping, engine revving. Oh boy, this thing moves. First gear, gone. Second gear, still spinning. Third, finally hooks up and suddenly you're doing double the speed limit. It's got that old school feel, but with just enough refinement to keep it from trying to kill you. Steering's tight. Brakes actually work. And that suspension soaks up the road like a proper muscle car should. But don't let that fool you. It still feels raw. Every bump, every gear change, every time you stab the throttle. It reminds you that you're driving a real deal. Pavement-peeling, tire-roasting machine. And you know what? That's exactly what this car was meant to be. A muscle car. Plain and simple. No gimmicks, no fluff. Just a big motor, a proper transmission, and enough attitude to make your neighbors call the cops every time you leave the driveway. Now, there's a lot of people out there complaining that muscle cars are a dying breed, that the world's moving on to silent, soulless electric things. But I gotta say, if this is Chevy's idea of a last hurrah, they knocked it out of the park. The 2026 Nova SS454 is loud, fast, and just stupid enough to put a smile on your face every time you drive it. And in my book, that makes it just about perfect. Now, if you'll excuse me, I got a set of tires that ain't gonna roast themselves.